I'm Christi Johnson. I'm an artist, a textile artist, born in Miami, raised in West Palm Beach. I lived in LA for 10 years, and now I live up in the Catskills for the past 6 years. The first time I came up here to visit, I came with my boyfriend, and I just was like, what is this place? Why aren't we living here? And it just seemed like there was so much community, so much artist community as well. And that in combination with all the amazing nature and the affordability of living, it was kind of a no-brainer. When it comes to working in the fashion industry and seeing the amount of waste that was produced, it was like kind of epic in scale, where I understood if I'm in this one cutting room, in this one building where there's 15 more cutting rooms up and down, or, up and down these floors, and there's 5,000 more buildings like this in this, in this town alone, there's 5,000 more towns that are doing the same thing, like kind of doing that multiplication of the amount of scraps that are going in the trash can. And a lot of companies, it's actually like illegal to pull those scraps because it can be like their proprietary prints or something. And so technically you could be like stealing their designs if you're getting in their scrap bin. And so some people would like mark it where like you cannot reuse them at all. And that's why a lot of companies will even like burn their samples because they don't want people taking them. So that was something that was really drove me nuts. And so I did to the best of my ability, would take like whatever scraps I could, piecing them back together and making new clothes out of them. And I also really love the way that when you're working with these scraps, you have this pre-existing shape that you have to design within. So you have these like parameters that you're required to work with if you want to use them. And that is, I think, a big reason too why scraps are not reused, is because it takes a lot of like mental kind of gymnastics to figure out how to reuse them. It takes sitting there with them, it takes time to like sit there, lay them out, do whatever you need to do to, reconfigure them. And it's not easy. So that for me is like, it was fun. I love talismans especially when it comes to textiles, because I think that is really a through line in the tradition of textile making. Like there is a lot of power that was given to the creation of textiles because it took like 50% of a household's time. And I love the idea of working with embroidery to create talismans, especially on used clothing, because I think it brings, again, like the idea of bringing new life into something that somebody has disposed of, and allowing it to kind of live again. We don't relate to language the same way that we relate to images. Images predate language. So we learn, like as human beings, when we're babies, we learn images. We learn how to recognize images before we ever learn our words. Same with human language. Like before we ever developed any sort of human language, there were, like cuneiforms and hieroglyphics, like these sort of image-based languages. And so a lot of these like tapestries, like the first thing that comes to mind is the Bayeux tapestry in France. These tapestries served as storytelling devices. So this piece is it's kind of all about finding the essence of something, distilling something down to the essence, which has definitely been something top of mind, in these like COVID era with essential workers. Like what do we need in our society that absolutely needs to happen? It seems like that's been like kind of a real big topic and like something that's really important to think about. Sometimes finding what's essential is not like an outward motion. It's not like, oh, let me find what's essential. It's actually getting quiet and like being receptive to what's going on. Our subconscious mind is the same as the subconscious minds of people living 500 years ago. And so I think we have a lot of these really ancient stories kind of swimming around in there, and it can be really fun to just see what comes up in that space. Textile arts are traditionally women's work. I think the fact that the term women's work itself has become a derogatory term says more about what we think about women than what we think about textiles. And I think that the kind of first wave feminism that has become really problematic, and for many reasons, but I think that was a big part of it, is that the idea that we don't have to do any of that is great, but that doesn't mean those tasks are any less than owning a business or chopping wood or whatever. And I do use that term women's work, and I think it can be women, it can be non-binary folk. But I do think it's kind of, when using the term women's work, it's bringing power back to that and reminding people that women's work is not to be dismissed. Women's work is integral to our existence. Women, raised children, women feed people, women clothe people. If we don't have food, we don't have babies, we don't have clothes, we're dead, and our species does not continue to live on.